And the plenary session we will have a little later, because that's the keynote address we'll have a little later, because I think that's what everybody would be looking for. People's food system, the case of Northeast India. You see, there's different types of food system, and indigenous people's food system is one of them. Northeast India, if you look at Northeast India, the country has a total forest cover of 21.54%, of which Northeast, the land area is just 7.9%. But the forest in Northeast is 25% of the country's forest area. Why am I talking about forest? Because forest is very important to the indigenous people. They coexist, because from within the environment where the indigenous people live, that is where we source the food. And if you look at the ranks of the states in Northeast India, that has the forest cover 15 states, of that all the Northeast 8 states are already there. Now, in land tenure system, this again is a very important issue, because here in Northeast India, the land is the land of the indigenous people is granted under the 6th schedule of the Constitution. Therefore, unlike any other places, the whole land is owned by the community, by the people. The government land is very small. For example, if you look at the state of Nagaland, the government land is just 5.6%. The rest is owned by the people. Likewise, other states of Northeast India also, here the people own the land. Therefore, the people have a traditional system of, the local land holding system governs how it should be utilized, how it should be passed on from generation to generation, and what area needs to be as a forest, what needs to be cultivated, and where it has to be cultivated. Everything is decided. If the government wants land for development, the people will donate it to the government, or the government will buy it from the people. Now, if you look at Northeast India, see, it is a treasure house of indigenous knowledge system pertaining to agriculture, food, medicine, culture, natural resources, biodiversity, etc. And where does the food come from? The food comes from 3 sources. One is the jhum fields, that is the shifting cultivation. Next is the paddy fields. But paddy fields are restricted to very few areas. Most of the states in Northeast India practice jhum cultivation, that is the shifting cultivation. The next, wild foods that come from the forest, or surrounding of the houses, or in the paddy fields, or in the jhum fields. So since ancestral time, plants have been utilized by the indigenous people, and the indigenous people have discovered and developed the use of many of these plants for their food, perhaps after a good deal of trial and error. Yet, many of these food remain unknown outside the country. See, if you look at the jhum cultivation, this is the fallow. That is after the cultivation it is left. If you look at those stubs that are coming out, those are the alder trees. These are normally planted along with the jhum field, and once it grows, you can see the other side where the jhum field is growing. Different types of vegetables, the cereals, everything is grown. Most of the principal crop in this jhum fields are normally the cereals, and then the vegetables. The other intermediate crops like the chilies, ginger, garlic are also sown, and of course the oil seed also is sown there. If you look at the varieties, there are so many varieties of food that are grown in the jhum field. Okay, so this is what the indigenous people's food system is. Cultivated cereals, wild game animals, animal source food, variety of insects, freshwater river fish, crabs, snail, frogs, etc. Then the fermented foods. There are a lot of fermented foods which are consumed in the cultivated wild crops, garden crops, and cultivated cereals. Now, in the indigenous people's food system, you see the different types of cereals, and cereals, or even pseudo cereals like the Phagopyrum, esculentum, then the varieties of rice that are consumed. I understand that there are 20,000 varieties of land races, rice land races in Northeast alone. That are, most of which are cultivated in the jungle. And if you look at the quax lacanus, that is the job steers, the protein content is almost double of what rice is, 15.3%. If you look at the varieties of rice, but you see, here when we analyze about 150 varieties of land races. We see a distinct difference. The protein range is also very good. See, if you look 5.39 to 12.38. When we analyze the high-yielding varieties that are normally grown, or the hybrid varieties, there also the protein content is 5.87 to 12.98. So it doesn't really differ that much. See, because of the variety, there are so many here, and it is in the policies of the government. If you look at the policies of the government, we have the PDS, which is a very good thing because it brings food to the poor people. But on the other hand, the rice that is coming in the PDS are all these glycemic index. And because the rice is coming through the PDS, people have stopped cultivating the land races. And they've started using the PDS rice. See, so you can imagine the impact it would have on the health. There are different types of roots and tubers that are consumed. On this side, you see those are the varieties that are normally cultivated. If you look at this Phytium edule, this is the chow chow vegetable. It has the leaves which are consumed. It has the fruit that is consumed. It has the tuber that is consumed. And on that other side are all the tubers from the wild. So it is all collected from the jungles or from the forests. The nutrient composition of the roots and tubers, if you look at the nutrient composition also, they are fair enough, good enough. If you look at as good as the cereals and tubers, as good as the cereals or the millets. And this actually supplements the food of the people. And the wild green leafy vegetables. There are so many wild green leafy vegetables in one. So, and most of these green leafy vegetables also has therapeutic values. For example, if you look at the Scintilla asiatica, this is also that, yes, it is a blood purifier. This is what the people would say. So when we analyzed it, we found very high iron content. I don't know whether it has any relationship with that, for example. And if you look at the Polygonum chinensis, when people have loose motion, this Polygonum chinensis is given so that it stops the loose motion. Likewise, you know, most of these vegetables have, most of these wild vegetables have different, this is another vegetable. If you, for those people with low blood pressure, they will not eat this because it is normally used as a vegetable, but it is also used to control hypertension. You eat this, when your blood pressure goes high, you eat this, within an hour it will come down. This is or it is boiled and the juice is drank. This is what people would do. Normally they are a good source of beta-carotene. See, all these wild leafy vegetables are good sources of beta-carotene. And we have the varieties of solanum, varieties, so many varieties. In fact, that Solanum gillo, I was thinking it was the African eggplant, Solanum aethiopicum. So I was saying that is Solanum aethiopicum. How did the African eggplant land up in Northeast India? But then later on, a botanist told me, no, it is not selenium. It's diabetic people use food for controlling their sugar, but is also used as vegetable. This provides a lot of phytonutrients, and if we look at the spice varieties, there's so many spices that are used by the people, which is a source of antioxidants, minerals, phytochemicals. You look at the capsicum and that is the kind of variety that you would put. The next one, capsicum fructices, is the Naga king chili, the hottest chili in the world. That has a capsaicin content of as high as 3.9 milligrams per 100 grams. So this is just to show you the diversity of the spices. Now the mushroom is a very good source of protein, and this supplements to the people's diet. When you look at the kind of mushrooms that we get, varieties. In every habitat, the mushrooms will come up, but then according to that habitat, the varieties will also change. So as big as that little girl, you can see that variety. And it is a good source of protein as well as vitamin D2, which we have analyzed. Now fruits again, so many varieties of wild fruits. Yesterday, Dandin was also showing us varieties of indigenous fruits. These are also, again, you see, good sources of beta-carotene or vitamin C. Then bamboo shoot plays a very important role in the diet of the people because this is consumed throughout the year. During the season, it is used as fresh. During off-season, it is actually fermented and used during off-season. So on the other side, you can see that plastic one, that is the fermented one. And the other yellowish one, that is the fermented one. So it provides variety to the diet of the people. Now this is rice bean, Vicna umbellata. This has many varieties, and this is one of the important grain legumes used by the indigenous people in Northeast. It has the small ones, the big ones, the gray ones, the brown ones, you know, the violet ones, varieties of it. Now this is another important beans. This is called the tree beans. In Manipur, they call it monkey beans, you know, and it is consumed right from the tender stages till the matured seeds that I have shown you on that other side. And it is a good source of protein, fiber, and the seed is actually a good source of fat because the fat content is quite high. You know, the fat content is as high as 33.5%. And so this is, being a tree legume, it fixes nitrogen to the soil, it gives you food, it gives you timber, because this is a big tree. Another important traditional oilseed is the Perilla fructescens. This actually has 50% oil, of which 56% is alpha-linolenic acid. So this actually was consumed by the people, even used as oil by the people before the advent of commercial oils that have come in now, the refined oil. Now, the use of this kind of oilseed is slowly losing out. And insects also form a very good, big part of the people's diet. This is a hornet, and the insect larva, hornet larvae, this is one of the, the tastiest, and it is a delicacy, very expensive, yet sought by the people. A kilo of this insect, the larvae, will cost about $150. Yet people, and the wild honeybee, that these people, they normally climb, pick up the wild honeybee, and then that's how it is utilized. The insects, the different varieties of insects, that again gives you protein, fat, you know, minerals, a source, because different insects are consumed by different people, different communities, different indigenous groups. According to the environment where they live, they harvest whatever different insects that are edible and available there. One important part of the paddy fields not just the cereals, but what you get from that paddy field, the small animals, the eel, the snail, the frogs, the insects, fishes, crabs. So if you look at this, the number of species You know, different type of species, crustacean, mollusks, amphibians, you have varieties of them. Now, this is the food list of one of the tribe in Chakazam. You have so many wild foods. You see the red bar, that is the wild one. The blue is the total. In all the food groups, totaling to 576 foods. Now, this is how the indigenous people supplement their food. But the problem, this is edible, you know. So the knowledge is there, but consumption has come down in the recent years. We did a study on the Chakazans. If you look at the vitamin A prevalence, you see it is among the children 32%, in India it is 68%, among the adults 25, 26%, in India it is double that figure. This is the result of the variety of foods that are being consumed by this indigenous population. Now we look at anemia prevalence, look, it is much lower than the national average. Look at the mild or moderate or the severe among the different women, you know, pregnant woman and a lactating woman, 26, 28%. The growth chart. If you look at the growth chart again, you will see the red one is a WHO trend line, the blue one is the NNB trend line, and the green one is the Chakazam trend line. You see that the children are also, growth is much better among the Chakazans than the normal Indians. And then you look at the prevalence of undernutrition. We have given NNB as well as the Chakazan. There is a vast difference. The Chakazans are doing much better. Nobody's timing me, huh? I can speak on and on. Now, you look at the distribution of BMI, look at the underweight, so low. But look at the NNB 38.4, whereas among the Chakazans it's just 10.1. Or you look at the hypertension is 18% among the Chakazans, 21% among the Indians. But mind you, this group of, this tribe, the Chakazan tribe, consumes 3 times of what we normally consume, that's salt. So we would expect the hypertension to be much higher, but there is some kind of different mechanism that they are able to get rid of. Diabetes, you look at diabetes in India, it's an NMB 6.8, whereas there it is just 0.8%. I already told this. Yeah. So this biodiversity, marketing, culture are essential component of an intact food system that supports the nutrition and health of both rural and urban populations. The case of Northeast India reflects the positive effect of biodiversity. Food biodiversity is the key to ensure food security, adequate nutrition and health. This is reflected in the strikingly much better nutritional status, the lower prevalence of NCDs among the Chakazans as compared to the rest of the country. Such critical relationship, however indirect it may be, reinforces the conviction that food-based strategies are key to addressing global hunger and malnutrition. Today, the indigenous people know more about the foods than they actually consume. This tradition is being slowly eroded, and nutrition policies should be sensitive to the needs of the indigenous people. Because if you say, okay, this is what we should do nationally, it may not really fit the indigenous population. Thank you very much.
The indigenous tribes, they're very different from the normal Indian population that we have. For example, I worked a lot in Jarvas, tribes in Andaman Nicobar. They still don't wear any clothes. There's no anemia among them at all. It's very rare. In India, where we have anemia more than 70%, they have no anemia. But on the other hand, Longvah, I think one thing you didn't mention, that the gender issue. I think in the tribal groups, the girl children are much healthier than the boys, which is not true anywhere in India. Gender is, on Tripura we found that the girl children are much healthier, have better height, better weight, no anemia till they're about 12 years age. But after 12 years, Longvah, when they come into the mainstream of civilization, the whole system changes again. The girls become less healthy and the boys become. So I think this is something which we need to retain, that in the indigenous population, girls are much more protected than the boys. So this is a strong gender issue I thought we share when we talk of the tribal population. Thank you, that's all. Thank you.
Dr. Andaman, thank you very much for this wonderful the presentation. So would it be possible to, in a similar kind of the agroecological zoning that can be, promoted in similar kind of system? I mean, also the potential for the scale.
I'm sorry. Come again. I was doing something. Can you come again?
Based on this the good health benefit of this indigenous system, I would like to know to what extent this system can be also replicated in other areas in a similar agroecological zoning or benefit to the rest of the Indian people.
Well, it is very difficult. That's why I talked to you about the land tenure system and the biodiversity there. Northeast India is one of the world's biodiversity hotspots. Every kilometer you travel, every kilometer you see a different species. That's the kind of land it is. Now, when you look at the tribals in India, they are not the owners of the land. They're just custodians.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of difference. In Northeast India, the tribes will decide what they will do with the land. Another problem with this is that, you see, with development coming in, education coming in, it's a hard life. It is not an easy life. The indigenous people's life that they are living, they're harvesting. Yes, it is good, but it is not an easy life. So the younger generation are looking for greener pastures, and with globalization, they are going to the cities for jobs. So in the long run, I don't know how sustainable this would be.
At Longvah, you have talked about tremendous variability of land races of rice in the northeastern states. So I would like to know, you had mentioned about very high protein content, up to 12%.
Yes.
And of course, very high glycemic index.
Being
a breeder, I would like to know about whether you are talking about the unpolished or polished rice.
Polished rice.
It was polished.
Polished rice.
So every breeder would be interested to get hold of those land races which have up to 12% protein content in polished rice. Otherwise, we always thought about we are just eating starch in rice, in polished rice, nothing else.
Agreed. So we did this study together with, in fact, they took some of these seeds and grew it in their fields in Ikrisat. And they said that the yield is much better. But I told them that this is not the variety that is normally grown in the paddy fields, because in the water, it's in the June field. So what happened is the yield is better, but then because it will not grow in the water system, it started falling down. The protein content, yes, even in the even in the high yielding varieties and the hybrids, we have done 350 rice samples from different ecological zones. There also we got rice protein content from 5.67 to 12.98. So the variation is there, but then you see, even in the land races, you will find that variation as well. And I'm sure people will be interested. Ruth, please.
Thank you so much for the nice presentation as usual. I have a question. If there is these land races and they are so much better from a nutritional point of view,
yes,
from a glycemic point of view, would it be worthwhile to speak with the agriculture policy makers to see if there is any possibility that this will become the main rice to be planted?
Possible. It is possible. That's what I was saying. We did this study with the Indian Institute of Rice Research. They have taken, they're actually working on it. But then rice have to be developed, and whether it will be suitable in the different climates. Though of course these are climate resilient because they are all land races. Through generations it has been passed down. So I'm sure it will be, but whether it will be suited, like I said, whether for the water paddy fields, because these are land races. So that trials needs to be developed by the plant breeders, I guess.
Well, I think it's a very good way of saying that this can become a nutrition-sensitive agriculture project. So if at the end it will be possible to adapt it or that it is possible that it is growing in other ecosystems, which is found in main India, it would be really great to have a change.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll take the last question because I just started off because we are waiting and I didn't want the time to be wasted. Now the people have come. I think we will start with the plenary session first, after which we will do the keynote address. So may I call Gina Kennedy, the chair of the session, to come forward, please. In the meantime, you can ask the question.
Well, short question. Do you think that the more polished rice is the highest amount of glycemic agent?
Polished rice? I didn't get your point. The more the polishing, the more the nutrient loss.
Yes.
We have done that also. We have done with that 350 rice varieties which we studied. We did different levels, 5% polishing, 10% polishing. The degree of loss at 10% is so much. Some minerals get lost up to 80-85%. So in fact, we had to advise the Millers Association to do the polishing up to 8%. But they are not willing because the luster is not there.
So I will request Dr. Gina Kennedy to please come out to the dais. I would request the speakers first.